You are listening to Processing Trauma Out Loud, conversations about trauma and healing from two women who are doing the work.
Everyone, this is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. Sher, we're back to do part 3 in our series on what is power, powerlessness, good power. How do we hold our power? What happens when we don't believe we have any power? And last week we talked a little bit about victimization. And this week we want to close this series out on, okay, if you listen to the last 2 episodes, I think you understand that we're talking about situations that maybe you're ready to start accessing the power that you actually do have, that you don't believe you have. And how does someone do that with, you know what, I want to say with wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, because there is that piece there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do that on my own.
Yeah. Right.
When I'm dysregulated, I'm actually not very wise.
Yeah. Well, your prefrontal cortex does go offline.
So, I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Well, I agree with wisdom. And I also want to say not perfectly, because this going from a stance of powerlessness to beginning to recognize that I do have power and that I want to utilize my power, it will be messy at times, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be messy because you're changing the rules of the system. The people around you are going to wonder, like, what's going on here? This isn't the way we do our relationship. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be messy. But yes, and a lot of that wisdom is who is there to support you, who is there to help you talk through the thoughts and ideas and conflict and struggles and meltdowns and all the things that can go awry.
We've walked with people closely. We know our own stories on regaining our power. And we've been able to witness how it's not that we're telling someone what to do.
Yeah.
Okay. We're reminding them of who they are.
Yep.
That's what we're doing. We're taking them back to, I don't want to say pre-trauma, okay? But let's just say they didn't have the developmental trauma, okay? Or if they did have trauma, it was seen and soothed and it was healed in real time, okay? That type of upbringing that develops a belief system that you have power, good power to use for goodness, for yourself and for the whole wide world.
Yeah.
That can actually be reestablished in you no matter how old you are.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes a lot of people bearing witness to the truth of what's really going on and helping you see.
Yeah.
And then it takes some renaming.
Yeah. Reframing. Because I'm just thinking about that when we have been the recipients of the abuse of power, and then we have really taken on powerlessness. Now, some people who were abused by power do power up, and they become, a lot of times people who abuse power experienced the abuse of power.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm glad you're bringing that up.
Yeah. So, and the point that I want to make is that when we are wanting to come out of this space where we feel powerlessness, we can really feel a fear of, but if I utilize power, I will be an abuser of power. And so part of the wisdom piece is learning, what does good power look like? And how do you begin to utilize your power? And again, by that we mean use your voice, set boundaries, tell somebody what your needs are, ask for mutuality in the relationship. Those are the kind of things we're talking about here. When we are first starting to move toward that, everything we do can feel like we are going to be abusing power. And we just need help to know, what does healthy power look like?
I think some of the stories that I've heard, and even thinking of my own story, is when we're in spaces of people who see us well and have done their own healing work, they have gone into their own story and depths and seen the nuance, seen the messages. There's so much compassion in that. If you have been the one who has abused your power or been abusive in your power, I've seen people crumble under the sorrow of why. And so we don't say it's okay to keep doing that just because that happened to you.
Right.
To see and witness that I have felt that way. So me being someone that powered up and used my voice at times pretty aggressively, I have felt the sorrow of that teenage girl, right? Who had no power and was overpowered. And then when I realized as a teenage girl, I could use my voice. And I actually, this is something I'm coming into more and more. I saw things and I named things as a teenage girl, and it did not go well for me.
Right. Yeah.
And so I would hold the anger. Right. Okay. So that's where the anger would come. That's where trying to use my voice would come. And yet the residual of that at times in my marriage and in my parenting, oh man, I have felt the sorrow over that.
Right. Yeah. And that's wherever we are on the spectrum, right? Of powerlessness to abusing power. That's the beautiful thing, is that when we come into this place where we recognize where honestly the person who is powerless and stuck in powerlessness can have also tremendous sorrow over the way that has hurt the people in their lives.
Yeah. I mean, I've had these conversations with my kids now.
Yeah.
And so what that looked like for me whenever I would power up and I would respond in anger, share the root of that was fear.
Yeah. Right.
It was fear. I was trying to use power to get my kids to not do certain things, or go certain places. And so instead of slowing down and listening to their hearts and their desires and what they needed and what they wasn't getting, I'm just trying to modify their behavior to make me feel better. Okay, we're getting into some deep waters here.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a different direction, but it's okay. It's about power, and I feel like it's really important though to make the point that being powerless can look almost good in a way, like because the other person is the bad one. The person who is maybe more controlling and more abusing power and holding power over, they can really be looked at as the bad one, and it's wrong what they're doing. But being powerless is also really hurtful to the relationships that we're in. And when we begin to recognize the effect of powerlessness, there can also be and should be and will be times of repentance and sorrow over that as well.
Over the effects.
Yeah. And yes. Yeah. So we want to talk today about, okay, I'm recognizing that I have not felt like I had power. I'm recognizing that I don't like where I'm at in my relationships. I don't like that this person is controlling me or this person is abusing power, and that I'm here and I'm stuck and I felt like I don't have options. But what would it look like for me to begin to step into my power? Let's talk a little bit about what can that transition look like?
Well, I think it can look hard. I think that it can, so it can look lots of different ways depending on your specific situation. But I think initially I will say this sometimes, like something short circuited my brain, because all of a sudden I'm literally seeing something or hearing something in a way that I could never conceive that I could have seen or heard it in that way.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so there's it's a disorientation of, wait, there is another option.
Right.
So that, I'll just say that right now.
Yeah.
It can be disorienting.
Yes, it can be. And really, it will be disorienting because we're talking about making this change in the construct of a relationship where there probably is a higher level of dissatisfaction. There maybe is conflict, even if it's not out in the open, but there's conflict because I don't like what you're doing to me. To begin to step toward doing life differently, it is going to feel disorienting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is why, and we kind of mentioned this a couple of episodes ago, and I think it's important to say it again. It's why we have to slow down. This process, it just cannot go fast. It won't work anyway. But how can we really slow down and just say, what is one thing that I will change today? Or what is one thing that I will do differently this week?
Yeah. I think one thing that you can do differently is you don't even have to do this with the other person. You begin to do it with yourself, where you say, is what I just said to this person true? Or did I say this for any reason? Like if you don't answer in the way that they need you to answer, that it's going to make your life difficult. So you don't have to do this with the other person. I want you to take note of the things that are coming out of your mouth. Are they really aligned with what's really true for you? And I think that is a huge assignment.
Can you give an example? Because I think it could be really good to talk about that in terms of, for example.
So, I mean, this can be little things to big things.
Yep.
I don't even know where to start. I think I'm just going to start with something little.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It could be as little as where you want to go out to eat. Okay.
Yep.
And you know that you have your favorite places, but you also know that if somebody else doesn't always get their favorite place, the dinner's just not as enjoyable. Okay. So this is little.
Yeah.
And so you will just always name something that you always know will make them happy.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I believe in compromise.
Yeah.
You just name it. Hey, I like this, you like this. But if you're just always thinking that it's never okay to say, you know what, can we go to my favorite place this time?
Yeah.
That's something little. So just notice if you do that. Yeah. Something bigger is, and this is where it gets pretty serious in my eyes. If you are allowing things that you know are harming your children to keep somebody else happy.
Yeah.
And I get it. There's a lot of complexity here.
Yeah.
You just know you're in a very unhealthy, unequal power dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, I went from little to huge.
Yep. Okay. So that's good. You've given us those two. So in your encouragement then, as a place to start is what? Recognizing the way that you would normally respond in that situation and then doing what differently? What
So
would be a first
just
step?
the noticing that you're doing it.
Yeah. So noticing is first. That's what you're
Noticing.
And I think also another step is practicing with somebody who's safe. When you begin to recognize that you haven't been using your voice or you haven't been letting the other person know what your needs are or even your wants, maybe it's when you go out for lunch with a friend, for example, and they say, well, where do you want to go? But you typically won't tell the truth. That would be a safe place to say, I would really like to go here. And then see how that's responded to.
Oh, yeah. Just start small. I mean, you and I have a history of practicing things with each other. I'll just give this example because it's really another example. There's things that maybe you've said or I've said that we have felt hurt over.
Yeah.
And so we have practiced sometimes with fear and trepidation in the beginning.
Yep.
Of just saying, the other day when this is what is happening for me.
Yep.
And I just heard this in a podcast the other day. The more you do practice things like that, the more you're able to do bigger things.
Yeah.
And so, we started practicing with one another. And I love that. I love that idea because you don't have to try to eat the whole elephant in one bite.
And the fact is that what you're changing is you. First, you're changing you and the way that you do life and the way that you do relationships. And that is, you keep yourself small, you keep yourself hidden, you don't really tell the truth about your wants and your needs, always just to please the other person. So start someplace with someone who is safe.
I want to say something too about this idea that sometimes your truth that you've shown up with has been labeled negative. And I want to say, if you call yourself negative or you're being negative when you're speaking the truth, I don't know. I would say slow down and really say, well, what's negative about it? Is it negative because somebody else doesn't agree with you or doesn't like it or has criticized you? Because so if you believe you're negative because you're speaking the truth, well, of course, you're going to keep sabotaging and keep turning against yourself.
Yeah. It's such an important point, Kandace, because again, this is about us beginning to make changes, and we can sabotage our own efforts before we even allow the other person an opportunity to experience us differently. We are so sure that this is the way life is, and this is the way life is going to be. And, if I speak up, this is what's going to happen, that we never really give the other person the opportunity to experience us in a new way. And that's not fair either. Now, we want to be careful. And like we said, practice with somebody safe. And there's a lot of personal responsibility here that I think sometimes we can overlook because the other person is the one who's perceived as being more bad or more wrong because they're abusing their power or control. And I'm not saying that they're not more bad or wrong. I'm just saying if we need to show up differently, then we have to let that be seen and not just keep making assumptions.
I think what I want to close with is to say that these are complex situations. So even the fact that Sher and I are just having 3 episodes about this and giving our thoughts, what I want to say, have someone who you trust. And maybe our podcast episodes would stir you up to find someone to do that with, because nuance matters. And story matters. And the pace of what we do things matter. One of the definitions of trauma is too much, too fast, too soon. We actually can re-traumatize ourselves trying to heal from trauma.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be us.
I like you saying that though, Kandace. And I think, it's really hard because we come on and we talk about this and in 20-minute segments or whatever. And this is a big one. And the implications can be huge. And so, yes, we take it seriously, and we want you to take it seriously, that if you move toward making some changes, get help, have support, and go slow.
And Sher and I have resources that we can point you to. We know some women who are doing some amazing, just, I want to say, with so much integrity, Sher. Like
we're seeing people change their lives.
Yes. Yeah. And then they want to go back out and help other people change their lives too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, we made it. 3 episodes. In person. And so, love you, Sher.
You too, friend. Really good to be with you.
Yeah, good to be with you too.
Thank you for listening to Processing Trauma Out Loud. Make sure to check out the show notes for links to suggested resources and social media. Like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with our weekly content. And if you don't mind, take a moment to rate and review us. Your feedback is extremely valuable and contributes to the success of this podcast. One last thing. If you have found this podcast helpful in any way, or if you have questions on how to take the next steps on your healing journey, please reach out to us via email at KandaceSher@gmail.com. That's KandaceSher@gmail.com. Our sound engineer is Jeremiah Jones of Auditory LLC. We welcome you to join us for more conversations soon. Take care.